Sonic the Hedgehog is my favorite character of all time, and while yes, I have my fair share of complaints against him, like a Lego version of him did try and kill me that one time, at the end of the day I still love his character in many of his games. He means a lot to me. I remember as a kid playing Sonic Generations and thinking, wow, this is so cool, and then learning about and playing games like Sonic CD. Yeah, the first classic Sonic game I ever played was Sonic CD. I got stuck at Metallic Madness. But again, like I said, his games mean a lot to me, so why don't we cover his original run of games dubbed by the fans as the classic Sonic games? So that's what we're doing today, we're covering the classic Sonic games. I have a feeling by the time I'm done with this, I'm going to be really f***ing tired of seeing Sonic's face. But first, I feel like I should give a short history lesson. Not on any important historic event, but rather on Sonic the Hedgehog. In the mid-80s through early 90s, a small company, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, Nintendo, dominated the home video game market. Needless to say, before Nintendo, console games had a varying quality, and the average consumer didn't see a reason to spend so much money on a video game when what they would receive would be E.T. on the Atari 2600. Aw dude, this game rocks. Did I mention that I'm actually playing Donkey Kong Country on another screen? Fun fact, this game reviewed so awfully and sold so bad that they destroyed the remaining stock and buried them in New Mexico. I like to think that this is in the same spot as Walter White's Money. Anyway, back to Nintendo's monopoly. For years, Nintendo had such a dominance in the home console industry because of how much of a strict quality control they had on their console, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Clearly not great, though. There are some awful third-party games on here, and Kid Icarus. But comparing it to the previous generation of consoles quality control, this gray box was sent from the heavens. Again, using E.T. on the Atari 2600 as an example. And I think the game that cemented how much quality control Nintendo games had was the launch title of Super Mario Bros. For the NES. This game was like a whole new thing back then, it was crazy. And it was so successful they made sequels, made Mario their mascot, made sub-franchises, it was crazy. But in the distance, a small company known as Sega saw the success of Nintendo's mascot Mario and thought, yeah, we can do this. So they came up with their own mascot, being Alex Kidd. This is not working. While Sega was doing okay at this time, in no way were they competing with Nintendo's NES nor Mario at the time, which kind of undermined their entire plan of overtaking Nintendo. Shortly after, in 1990, they had released their second home console being the Sega Genesis. However, it had less than impressive sales at the time. But this lack of success gave them an idea. What if we compete with Mario by not having a bullshit mascot? So they started a company-wide contest to design the next and final Sega mascot. After a long time of consideration, they landed on an employee named Yuji Naka and his character Sonic the Hedgehog, and soon after put the first Sonic the Hedgehog game into development. I'm going to skip the whole development cycle here and just tell you that the first Sonic the Hedgehog was released in June of 1991 and had unbelievable success. So many kids wanted a Sega Genesis just for this game, which is why it quickly became the pack-in game for the Genesis and had this big-ass not for resale label on it. It's actually hard to find copies without this label. I think that goes to show how successful this game truly was. To reinstate, this game was huge. Like, huge. And I think a lot of that had to do with the genius character design they had for Sonic. A lot of inspiration was taken from old Rubber Hose animated characters like Felix the Cat and Mickey Mouse, however they added their own 90s charm to it. They gave him bright colors, cool shoes, and his most notable trait being his unapologetic 90s attitude. Saying that feels really gross, I'm sorry. Comparing Sonic to Mario, this dude might as well be gunning puppies down in the street because he was made to be the edgy equivalent to the squeaky clean Mario. By edgy I mean they just had a hedgehog with exaggerated expressions that would talk smack. This was the 90s. And also comparing the first Sonic game to even the latest Mario game at the time, it was crazy. No wonder so many kids wanted a Sega Genesis so bad. But how is the first Sonic game as a game? With how I've been describing it, it must be great, right? The first Sonic game kinda sucks, I won't lie. It doesn't age the best, and not every level is created equally at all. Sucks is a big word, there is a lot of fun to be had in this game, but looking at this game over 30 years later, a lot of aspects in the game don't age gracefully whatsoever. But I will say, when this game first came out, it must have been great. Keep in mind I'm looking at this game after games like Sonic 2 and 3 released, so of course they age better. When the game first starts up, you're introduced to the world of Sonic with Green Hill Zone, and I don't think there's a much better way to introduce the world of Sonic than with Green Hill Zone. It has bright colors and does a great job at introducing you to the speed of Sonic, and the lush landscapes in the background bring it all together. The basic plot of this game is that Robotnik is bad and is turning animals into machines and Sonic has to go rescue them. I like this story because it does a great job at letting you know what the character's motives and basic personality is with a little amount of storytelling they're able to do with the hardware at the time. Like, it introduces that Dr. Robotnik is a mad scientist that likes to experiment on unwilling animals, and it shows that Sonic likes nature and wants to stop Robotnik from, doing all that. Another way they do characterization in this game with the limitations at the time is with idle animations. This game didn't introduce idle animations in games, but is by far the most popular use of them, and one of the best implementations of them. When you don't move Sonic for a moment, he'll start tapping his foot on the ground, showing you that he does not f**k with whatever's going on right now, and further showing his attitude, which is only really shown otherwise on the title screen of this game. Speaking of the title screen gives us Sonic's iconic finger wag. This thing is iconic, but has anyone ever thought about how little sense this makes? He's wagging his finger like he's saying no, like no, don't play this game. Okay. After the first level and the initial character building this game does, the game kind of falls off. The game devs seem to not have a great idea on how they wanted to balance the difficulty of the game, because the first level is a very peaceful, grassy level, and the second level in the game is just much harder and has a much bigger emphasis on tight platforming. Yeah, Marble Zone kinda sucks in the sense that it's the second level in this game. In any other game, I would say that this level would be fine, good even, but as the second level in Sonic, a game about maintaining your speed with platforming that adjusts to your speed, and then having the second level being this enclosed area with precise platforming that rarely has you go fast. And sadly, the game doesn't really pick up much after this. The next level, Spring Yard Zone, is fine, but again, it doesn't really do a great job at utilizing Sonic's speed and instead goes for pinball physics, which in a game where the main character has pinball physics, it was inevitable, but it could have been done much better. After Spring Yard Zone, we have Labyrinth Zone. I'll get to my thoughts on this level in a second, I have some other things to talk about first. When you beat the game normally, it ends with Sonic running through Green Hill Zone as the credits go by, but this is not the canon ending. So you get the real ending of this game by collecting all 6 Chaos Emeralds. The 7th one didn't exist yet. I like to imagine Sonic just didn't find it, meaning he didn't become Super Sonic. Anyway, you get the 6 Chaos Emeralds by doing these special stages. And you get to the special stages by getting to the end of either Acts 1 or 2 of the zone and having 50 or more rings on you. And then a big ring appears, and once you enter it... I do not know how people deal with these special stages. These are disgusting to watch, especially play. Trying to maneuver around a spinning stage while the background has imagery of a goddamn fish? What? But if you somehow do this right, you're rewarded with a Chaos Emerald. Once you complete the game after collecting all of them, you get the canon ending. Oh boy, I wonder what it could be. Flowers are added to the final shots. What? I get that they didn't have much to work with to tell a more proper story, but I feel like having a secret final boss or something would have had this feel much better than just some flowers being put on the screen. Oh boy, how rewarding. I feel like the main issue with this game is that it peaks at the beginning and does not get close to reaching the same quality as its first level. I would say that the rest of the levels in this game range from fine to underwhelming to the spawn of Satan himself. Labyrinth Zone should not have been added to this game at all. I would have rather been shot repeatedly in the head with a nail gun. Labyrinth Zone is probably one of the most hated levels not in just Sonic history but in video game history in general, and yes, that is deserved. For one, this level is hardly a maze, and when it is, it doesn't deserve to be called a labyrinth, so already the name makes no damn sense. And right when you start the level, you're introduced to it with this ugly ass brown, which is not a very good introduction. And right when you start running, you realize that this is a water level. This level does not have nearly enough air bubbles, has so many spikes and so many projectile enemies, and you can't dodge anything because Sonic is slow and delayed as hell underwater. And the boss fight? God, the boss fight absolutely sucks. And not like, oh, this is kind of unfair sucks, like... sucks. I hate Labyrinth Zone so much I decided to stop drinking water for good because it reminds me of the level. And again, the rest of the levels in this game are just fine and nothing special, which... Overall, the original Sonic the Hedgehog isn't great. It's not horrible, but with the passage of time and having much better games to compare it to, this game is just not worth going back to besides like Green Hill Zone. However, what this game does do well is laying the groundwork for the Sonic series, and pave the path for the eventual sequel, because look at those game sales. So with all that comes Sonic the Hedgehog 2. After the original Sonic the Hedgehog, the developers were split into two. The US team was set to work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and the Japanese team was set to work on another game that we'll get to in a little bit. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 takes what the first game did and takes it to 11. The game is faster, brighter, levels are bigger, bosses are more grand, all of this. One of the ways they emphasize Sonic's speed is by, well, making him faster, but also this game learns from the mistakes of Sonic 1 and actually has levels designed to work with Sonic's speed. This game also introduces a new ability for Sonic to move where he curls up and revs up into a dash. It's the spin dash. I like this move a lot because it allows you to get up to full speed if you can maintain it, and it lets you get through enemies easier without just slowly jumping on all of them. I'm happy to say that unlike Sonic 1, Sonic 2 does a much better job at consistently keeping the quality across the game. Like, not all levels are completely equal, but I wouldn't say there's a truly bad level in this game. Ones that miss, sure, which I'll get into, but they aren't bad in a general sense. This game also introduces one of the most popular Sonic characters being Miles per Hour, but actually Tails. Tails is a fun and cute sidekick, however on replays of this game I recommend turning him off because he can be a pain in the ass to deal with. Did you know that in beta versions of this game, if Tails got hit, you would also lose your rings? Thankfully they got rid of that. Tails is one of the most iconic Sonic characters, and the Sonic series would be a lot different without him, so it's nice to see him here. The plot of Sonic 2 is that Robotnik has stolen the Chaos Emeralds, and Sonic and his new friend Tails have to go collect them and defeat Dr. Robotnik. But Dr. Robotnik is much more powerful this time as he has his Death Egg, which totally is not a ripoff of Star Wars' Death Star. The Death Egg is set to destroy Sonic's planet, so on top of collecting the Chaos Emeralds and defeating Dr. Robotnik, you must also take down the Death Egg. I like that this game is able to tell a much more grand story while also keeping with the limitations of the hardware, just like Sonic 1. Sonic 1 opens up with the Green Hill Zone, a great zone which excellently introduces you to the main mechanics of the game while also being an appealing area because, places like Labyrinth Zone are not very appealing. And Sonic 2 opens up with what is essentially another Green Hill Zone, this one being Emerald Hill Zone, and it does what Green Hill Zone did, but even better. It does a great job at introducing you to the core game mechanics, while also being more open with better level design. It's way more bright than Green Hill Zone, hence the name Emerald Hill Zone. Like when I play this level, I feel like I get hit by a flash bomb, which isn't a bad thing. As the game progresses, it doesn't lose the quality that this level sets up, as the next level, Chemical Plant Zone, is one of the greatest Sonic levels of all time. Chemical Plant is A, very good, and B, what they should turn Central Park into. My only real problem with this level is that the difficulty jump from Emerald Hill Zone to Chemical Plant Zone is very noticeable, but it's nowhere near Marble Zone level of this. And this zone actually allows you to utilize your speed most of the time on top of having hard but fun platforming. And I feel like not being restricted to such a small area like Marble Zone makes this level so much better. This level is most well known for the part where the water is quickly rising and you have to quickly jump up the moving platforms before you drown. This is iconic because it stressed everyone the fuck out with the whole drowning music and stuff. Another thing I like about this level is that it shows the extent of the damage that Robotnik is doing. The dude owns a whole chemical plant, imagine if this thing exploded. As the game continues, you get some more interesting levels, and again, they're mostly all great. Like, I don't love Oil Ocean Zone, but it's not a bad level, it's just kind of frustrating. Plus, I don't really like the color orange, so. One of my favorite levels is Casino Night Zone. It takes the whole pinball physics thing with Spring Yard Zone from the first game and does it much better, and it introduces gambling to the Sonic series. I think we were all waiting for this. You can go into these little things that allow you to play slots, and if you get Sonic or Tails heads, you win rewards like rings or extra lives, but if you get Robotnik heads, you're punished with losing rings or lives. I wonder if this level introduced any kids to gambling and they actually started a crippling addiction to it when they got older. Like, there has to be one.
Oh hey guys, today I'm going to be gambling my life savings away. The dear viewer might ask why. Well, Sonic 2 told me.
The house always wins.
With all the praise I give this game, I think it kind of falls off with the last few levels leading up to the final boss, but these aren't really awful, they're more just mediocre. First there's Metropolis Zone, which is for some reason the only level in this game to have 3 acts. I don't hate this level really, a lot of people have a massive hate boner for it. My main problem is that this is for some reason the only level in this game to have 3 acts like Sonic 1, and the acts don't separate themselves from each other at all, so this one just feels like one very long level. Usually when I start playing this game, this is where I stop because it doesn't really get much better after this. Sky Chase is a level where Tail flies a plane called the Tornado to the Death Egg. You have to play while on the plane, which normally follows you, but sometimes it won't be able to pick you up, meaning you get unfair deaths, but you learn your lesson after like the 3rd or 4th time. It gets pretty annoying. After Sky Chase comes Wing Fortress Zone, which is an okay level, but you die a lot since it takes place in the sky, meaning you can easily fall off the railing or whatever you're on. And this level has you finding the entrance to the Death Egg, which once you get on it, you have to fight the final 2 bosses. This level's whole thing is that it has 0 rings whatsoever, meaning you have to defeat 2 boss fights without getting hit once or else you'll... I think that they knew it would be a bit too easy otherwise, but having no rings means you have to memorize attack patterns a little bit too much. There's ways to get past the Death Egg robot, which makes this like the easiest boss fight ever, but remember, kids in the 90s are kids in the 90s, so they had to sit through this, and I don't think they had easy access to figuring out this information. Once you defeat Robotnik, Sonic falls out of the Death Egg as it explodes and Tails comes to save you, but this isn't the canon ending. I'm supposed to collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds. You collect the Chaos Emeralds by going past a post in this game while having 50 or more rings, and if you do this, it takes you to a special stage being the Half Pipe. I've never liked the Half Pipes, I've always hated how they look since I hate the pseudo 3D style they try and do with these. You're tasked with collecting the set amount of rings, and if you get the required amount, you can progress until you get the Chaos Emerald. And while it starts out fair enough, as you do more and more, these become incredibly annoying and unfair. Like, how am I supposed to have the reaction time to pull this off? But anyway, once you complete 7 of these, you have access to turn into Super Sonic. Once you collect 50 rings in a stage, Sonic will transform into his super form. Super Sonic is Sonic, but he looks sick and he's invincible to anything besides water and things that crush you. However, to balance it out, your rings drain the more you use Supersonic, so you must collect more rings to stay being Supersonic. And to get the canon ending of the game, you must complete the game as Supersonic. And you may wonder, what's the canon ending compared to the non-canon ending? Okay, so again in the non-canon ending, once Sonic destroys the Death Egg, he's plummeting in the sky to, have his eventual death end. But Tails comes in the tornado to save you, and there's a cute ending showing that Tails is just as heroic as Sonic. Anyway, the canon ending is the exact same thing with Sonic plummeting in the sky, but he's Supersonic, meaning he would be fine, because he's invincible. Tails still comes, but not to save him, but rather to join him. I don't know, man, I just find this ending a lot less cool for Tails. Like, Sonic doesn't need your help, little prick. I would have preferred if the explosion from the Death Egg being destroyed caused Sonic to lose his supersonic powers, and as he falls out of the blown up Death Egg, he's about to fall to his death, but then Tails comes to save him. But yeah, that was Sonic 2. It was such a step up from Sonic 1, and I think it goes down as one of the greatest platformers of all time. While the game isn't perfect, especially with the last few levels, it more than makes up for it with everything else in the game. And comparing it to Sonic 1 again, this game radiates Sonic so much more. Like, he goes so fast in this game that many times that camera can't even keep up with him. That's awesome. So anyway, with all this, the Sonic series had nothing left to do but go up, and everyone was excited for the third Sonic the Hedgehog. So without further ado, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog wait, no, not Sonic 3. So for the Sega Genesis, they had this add-on called the Sega CD. The Sega CD attached to the side of the Sega Genesis and was able to play Sega CD-based games, unlike the Sega Genesis normal cartridge-based games. Kinda like the N64 disk drive, if you actually know what that is. The benefits to using CDs to store games rather than cartridges are that CDs are infinitely cheaper to produce and are able to play high-quality videos with higher quality audio. High-quality videos on a Sega Genesis is more or less just the ability to actually be able to play videos on the Sega Genesis, because in no world should this be considered high-quality motion video, but this was still really cool for the time. And of course, Sega actually wanted to sell this thing, so I put a game in development starring their favorite cash cow, Hedgehog. It originally started as an expanded port of Sonic 1 with cut levels, remastered music, motion cutscenes, etc. But as the developers worked on this more and more, they decided they wanted to make an original Sonic the Hedgehog game for the system. So in 1993 came the release of Sonic the Hedgehog CD, better known as Sonic CD. This game opens up with one of the greatest Sonic animations of all time, showing what kind of video the Sega CD can produce. Just kidding! The PC port of this game has this beautiful animation, but for the Sega CD release, they had to crush the video down to get it to be able to play on the Sega CD. Because, again, this was the 90s, high-quality video was way too advanced for most consumer-available technology at the time, but god, this animation gets crushed. It's like you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. I would much rather fuck the PC port of this animation. What the hell did I just say? It kinda makes me wonder if they commissioned an animation and once they realized it couldn't play on the Sega CD hardware, they crushed it down. Considering a lot of things that Sega does, this would not be surprising. But anyway, this excellently shows the cockiness and attitude Sonic is known for. Also, he shows off whenever he can, because he's a prick. If there was anything at the time that perfectly showed off who Sonic was as a character, it would be this, the PC version. I can't see the damn Sega CD version. But once this game starts, the game is much more similar to Sonic 1 as it is Sonic 2, which is a bad thing. It reuses most of the same sprites and animations, and it has similar level designs, which means levels that are more about strict platforming than speed, which I'll talk about in a second. However, this game does have the spin dash from Sonic 2, but it has nowhere near the same flair as it did in Sonic 2. It looks f***ing bad. I said it. This game does introduce a new ability for Sonic to use, which makes him go even faster. Press up on the D-pad and click the jump button, and Sonic will start his super peel-out form. I love the peel-out stylistically, but how often do you think I use this thing? Never. I never use it. Unlike the spin dash, this ability leaves you vulnerable to enemies, meaning you'll go fast and look cool for about 2 seconds before. The super peel out is a cool ability in concept, but in execution it fails miserably, which sucks because I think this thing looks sick, but you know, things happen.
Damn it! Also, one pretty odd thing they decided to do in this game is have 2 entirely different soundtracks for the game in Japanese and Western markets. And while both OSTs are great in their own right, the Japanese soundtrack is one of the greatest video game OSTs of all time. I'm happy that in pretty much every re-release of this game they let you change the region of music you play with, because playing Sonic CD without the Japanese soundtrack would be like playing Sonic CD, but not. To all the 90s kids in America that played the original release of Sonic CD, I'm sorry, I guess? The plot of this game is that Dr. Robotnik is up to no good, again.
That goddamn bastard!
Once every year, a planet called Little Planet is visible from Sonic's home planet, but Robotnik has decided to chain the planet to a mountain, keeping it there forever, so he can turn it into like a mega base for all the bad stuff he does. What do you think this guy gets up to when he's not fighting Sonic? To make sure his plan doesn't fail like it always does, Robotnik uses the time crystals to his advantage, which allow him to like control the flow of time and whatnot. In the intro, you see Sonic go onto this planet to stop Robotnik for the billionth time, but to add another layer of annoyance, he was followed by Amy Rose, who cannot get enough of him. F***ing hell. Robotnik sees this and sends his newest creation, Metal Sonic, to kidnap Amy. I always forget that Sonic CD introduces both Amy and Metal Sonic. These are such iconic characters and it's nice to see them here. When you first start this game and get past the animated opening, you're introduced to Palm Tree Panic, and we get to see how this game utilizes the power of the Sega CD. Look, it kinda goes 3D here. This level's just another green grass level to start things out with. I would say it's better than Green Hill Zone, but not better than Emerald Hill. Sadly, after this, Sonic CD does what I've dubbed Does a Sonic CD, where the game gets all weird. The game switches up after this, becoming more of a let's see what the hell we can get away with here type of game. For one, all the levels in this game don't sound like real places in the Sonic world, rather funny taglines. Like Green Hill Zone, it's a zone with green hills. Chemical plant? Yep, checks out. Wacky workbench? What the hell? And the levels, again, just feel like the level designers were bored and wanted to see how much they could get away with. Because the levels after the first one become bounce pads, spinny things, and enemies everywhere. As well as the contrast being a little too high, so all the colors are super bright and it becomes hard to make out things from the background sometimes. It was never a huge problem for me, but I would notice that sometimes I would just walk into an enemy because of how hard they are to see, which, yeah, that gets damn annoying. But for as much complaining as I can and will do about Sonic CD, I like Sonic CD a lot. The level design can feel a little bit random and confusing at times, but it's never bad per se, more annoying. But when this game is fun, it's really fun. Like, this game can be extremely creative. Like some of the bosses, while they don't all work in execution, there's one where you run on a treadmill thing and you have to maneuver the bombs to hit Robotnik. That's pretty cool. Or my favorite level in the game, Stardust Speedway, which starts out as a normal level, but for the boss act, it's a whole race against Metal Sonic. I love this boss fight, it's super creative and it leads into you saving Amy. Annoying bitch, but still. You may remember when I was explaining the story how I mentioned the time crystals. These are kind of the Chaos Emeralds of this game. So using the power of these crystals, Robotnik has had these signposts put throughout the levels. I don't really know, but he did that. By passing through the corresponding past or future sign in each level and destroying these capsules, you save the future or past of the level. And you need to collect all 7 time stones by doing this special stage. These special stages are fine. I surprisingly like these more than the special stages from the 2 games before, and I think it's because this one has by far the most fun gameplay loop. In these, you must chase a UFO, and from that, you must collect the time crystal from it. And yeah, I think these are pretty fun. Sometimes the grain can be a little jarring on the eyes, but trust me, it's a gift from God compared to the half-pipe from Sonic 2. The only other notable thing I can bring up about this game is that if you enter the code 461225 into the sound test, you get this screen.
My pants are pissed.
Okay, so on the internet, this screen is commonly dubbed as a satanic message because Majin translates to Satan or something. But no, they did not hide a satanic message in a Sonic the Hedgehog video game. This was clearly the developers messing around and doing whatever the hell this is. And I know it's just the developers messing around because also in the sound test you can find a Batman parody of Sonic, some random DJ image, among a ton of other secrets, so it's like clearly they were just bored and wanted to add some silly stuff. But no, the more logical answer is that Satan told them to add a secret screen into Sonic CD where Sonic is Satan. Also, this screen roughly translates to fun is infinite, so, you know, take that as you will. But imagine a kid in the 90s seeing this, it's like showing a Neanderthal an iPhone. Imagine how scared they would be. That was such an awful comparison, what is wrong with me? This game ends with Sonic defeating Dr. Robotnik, saving Little Planet, and putting the time stones back. Crazy, right? As the game ends, you also get another animation as the credits roll by. This animation shows highlights from some of the levels in the game, like Sonic running through Palm Tree Panic or him racing Metal Sonic in Stardust Speedway. I really like this animation, a lot of care was clearly put into it. Sadly, again, it's butchered in the Sega CD release, of course. You may wonder what the canon ending of this game is. Well, everything is the same, except at the end of the credits it shows some flowers on the screen. What is with flowers for 100%ing Sonic games? I guess it's to show that you gave the best future to every zone in the game, which is cool, but there had to have been a better way to show this that isn't just a couple of flowers on the screen. Overall, Sonic CD is far from the quality of Sonic 2, but it's much better than Sonic 1, so yeah, congratulations, you're better than the game with Labyrinth Zone. But that's fine, this is meant to be a short side game, so it doesn't need to live up to the quality of Sonic 2. And for being just a short little side game for a console add-on, it's more than okay. This game just feels a little unfocused, like they had some really great ideas, but also ideas that involved Sonic bouncing all over the stage. That gets pretty annoying. I really like this game from a storytelling perspective. They use the capabilities of the Sega CD to tell a much more clear story than either Sonic 1 or 2, which I think is awesome, even if they are a little bit f***ed on the Sega CD release. And I also really like many of the gameplay ideas for this game, even if many of them didn't land the greatest. Well, with all that, that was Sonic CD. And with Sonic CD, next comes Sonic the Hedgehog 3. For me, Sonic 3 was always a classic Sonic game that I missed out on. Not that I didn't have any access to this game, I did, but I never played much past the first level. I don't think there's any deep reason why, I just never played much of it, therefore I never understood the true gift from God this game is. I remember hearing things online about how this is one of the best Sonic games ever made, and I was like, is it really that good? But one day I decided to pop in Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection to my PS3 one day and play through Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Wait, and Knuckles? What does that even mean? Says the neurotypical people in the audience. Well, Sonic 3 was set to be the biggest Sonic game ever, having nearly twice the amount of levels as the previous games and telling a full story with, twists and turns. But making a big game is harder than most people realize, which caused them to have to delay the game. But to advertise for the game, Sega had made a deal with McDonald's for them to make Sonic the Hedgehog Happy Meal toys, but they couldn't push them back and wait for the game to release, so they chose to split the game into two parts, being Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. Were these worth it? I'm so pissed off about this, 30 years later, I told the underpaid McDonald's employee that I refused to support their company because of what they did to Sonic 3. There's always been a debate on if you should combine Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles into Sonic 3 and Knuckles since they are technically two different games, but they're clearly meant to be the same game, they just had to split them up because of unfortunate circumstances. Fuck McDonald's! And in pretty much all re-releases of this game, the games are combined into Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, like the Sonic Origins re-release, and the ones that don't have them combined outright have the option to do so. So I will be looking at Sonic 3 and Knuckles as one game. Sorry to the anti-Sonic 3 and Knuckles combination club. If you have a problem, please take it up with the Coil Council. You may wonder, what do you mean by combining the games? What does that do? Again, says the neurotypical people in the audience. So while you can play each cartridge of the game standalone, since they are technically one full game, Sonic and Knuckles includes a new type of technology dubbed lock-on technology. I'm so locked in, I got a shirt based after it.
Yeah.
This technology allows you to attach another Sega Genesis cartridge to the top of it so you're able to get extra things in the game. The lock-on technology is pretty much only used to attach both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, but it works with a few other games. In games like Sonic 1, you get a ton of Blue Sphere levels to play, which is cool, but in Sonic 2, you get to play as Knuckles in the game. Not Sonic 1 though, supposedly Knuckles didn't work with the game's color palette, even though since then Knuckles has been playable in almost every single re-release of the game. Almost like they didn't try hard enough. Speaking of Knuckles, Sonic 3, and Knuckles, was the game to introduce Knuckles, one of the most iconic and popular Sonic characters. The plot of Sonic 3 takes place directly after the events of Sonic 2, which means the Sonic CD takes place between Sonic 1 and 2. So when Sonic destroys the Death Egg in Sonic 2, Robotnik crash lands on this island called Angel Island, where he meets Knuckles the Echidna, who guards the Master Emerald, which is able to stop the Chaos Emeralds from working, meaning that if Robotnik has it, he cannot be hurt by Super Sonic, so he wants it. Robotnik tells Knuckles that Sonic and Tails are attempting to steal the Master Emerald from him, so Knuckles agrees to help him repair the Death Egg and stop Sonic and Tails. When Sonic and Tails catch wind of this, they start heading to Angel Island, where Sonic is still in his super form from Sonic 2. But right when they enter the island, Sonic is stopped by Knuckles, who punches him so hard that all the Chaos Emeralds come out of him and he's no longer in his super form. And then Knuckles steals the Chaos Emeralds and gives them to Robotnik. What? I've never understood this. Like, Knuckles is supposed to be a strong brute, but nowhere near Chaos Energy strong. I get that this is like a plot thing, but one punch from Knuckles should not be able to knock Chaos Energy out of you. Trust me, I'm in this situation all the time. But whatever, I can only be mad about a minor plot hole for like another hour. With all this starts the game of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and also Knuckles. The first level in the game is Angel Island Zone, and I really like this zone. I think that it's a strong opening for this game, and I also think it's cool that the first cutscene in the game leads into this level. A new gameplay element this game introduces is a new move for Sonic to pull off, similar to the Spin Dash from Sonic 2. This new move is called the Insta Shield. Basically, when you tap the jump button a second time at the peak of your jump, a little white swoosh will appear above Sonic. This ability extends Sonic's damage box, allowing him to have a higher hit range and get more enemies and land easier hits on bosses. It's nowhere near as useful as the Spin Dash added in Sonic 2, as that move lets you get to top speed almost immediately and lets you get through a ton of enemies, but this move is still surprisingly useful. Although when I was little, I never really understood what this thing was, and I just assumed it was a stylistic thing, which I don't know if this shows that this move is a little confusing, or it comments more on my intelligence. I'll leave that up to you. In my opinion, Angel Island Zone feels a little basic, since in every game we've looked at so far, it starts with a bright green grass level, and that's not going to change. Even though I think that this one has the best world building and presentation, it still feels pretty basic. So thank God they lit the whole damn thing on fire in the second act. Speaking of the second act, Sonic 3 makes a difference on how act progression works. In previous games, you would run past a signpost and progress to the next level. However, Sonic 3 gets rid of this and instead has 2 bosses per zone in the game. While I like the quote-unquote thrill of running at breakneck speed through a signpost to complete the level, having a small boss to fight at the end of each act is actually a really good way to expand the gameplay. In my opinion, Sonic 3 is the best stages in all of the classic Sonic games. The levels feel even more like actual environments with all the branching paths and lively backgrounds. Each level in this game feels so open. I always love seeing how 2D games make places feel like they actually feel lived in, and Sonic 3 does that to almost perfection. As you progress through the game, you're sent to to all these lush environments and you get some awesome f***ing levels. Like, Hydro City is really awesome, and also just caused one of my favorite debates within the Sonic community on if this level is pronounced Hydro City or Hydrocity. The answer is Hydro City, by the way. If you think otherwise, you're wrong. While I normally hate water levels in Sonic games, hence my whole water strike with how much I hate Labyrinth Zone from Sonic 1, I'm extremely happy to say that Hydro City Zone is not only a great water level, but just a great level in general. I think that the best thing is that through the majority of the level, you have a choice of either staying as much as you can on dry land or staying as much as you want in the water, for some reason, which for someone who hates being in the water like me, this is very nice. But even while being underwater, while not being ideal, at least for me, they learned their lesson from Labyrinth Zone and didn't make it awful. Also, it's important to note that in every few levels, Knuckles comes to work as a fork in the road for Sonic, which further emphasizes the conflict between Knuckles and Sonic in this game, which is one of my favorite things about this game. Knuckles is a fucking prick. I really like many of the other levels in this game, like Marble Garden Zone. I like to think that this is in some way a sequel to Marble Zone. I really like the purple mountains in the background, I just wanted to point that out. The level Carnival Night Zone is just another pinball level, but unlike Casino Night Zone, this level does not involve gambling. I like to think in the short time between Sonic 2 and 3, Sonic got a hold of his gambling addiction. I really like Carnival Night Zone. In fact, I would say that with all the pinball levels, this one is by far the best. I would have appreciated if this level included gambling like Casino Night Zone. Another level I really like is Ice Cap Zone. You're playing a Sonic level inside of a snow mountain. How could you not love that? And how could I ignore the iconic set piece at the start with Sonic snowboarding down a mountain on a piece of ice? It's not much gameplay wise, but it's super cool. This level even has music believably composed by Michael Jackson. How awesome is that? Sure would suck if they outright confirmed that the music was made by Michael Jackson after removing it from the Sonic Origins re-release. How could they ever do that? As you reach Launch Base Zone, which I might add, I f***ing love the detail where you can see the Death Egg being rebuilt in the background. I also assume it's called Launch Base Zone because this is where they plan on launching the rebuilt Death Egg. After a fight against Knuckles, you have to fight Robotnik and destroy the Death Egg yet again. As this level and also the first half of this game ends, the Death Egg is relaunched, but when Sonic fights Robotnik and destroys the Death Egg yet again, it crashes into Angel Island Zone, which leads into the next half of the game, Sonic and Knuckles. Does Robotnik survive? Will Knuckles find out Robotnik is tricking him? Does Tails f***ing die? I don't know. Find out in Sonic and Knuckles. In this game, you start out in Mushroom Hill Zone, and god damn it, it's another green grass stage. I actually really like Mushroom Hill Zone though. I think the mushrooms help it stand out from the other billion bright green grass stages that each Sonic game has. I think it is important to note that they did change this level up in the second act by giving it more of a fall aesthetic rather than a bright green hills level. At the end of this level, Knuckles tries messing with you again and sends you to Flying Battery Zone. Flying Battery Zone is also one of my favorite classic Sonic levels. I've never understood what a flying battery is and what it's supposed to mean, but this level is so well designed. This level, in my opinion, actually has one of the most creative boss fights in the entire game, where you immediately see the capsule you break at the end of the boss before you even start the boss fight. But when you step on it to save all the animals, it turns into a robot with spiky arms and stuff that tries to kill you. I just think that this boss fight is really cool since it plays with other elements in the game to create a boss fight. The next level in this game is Sandopolis Zone, and a lot of people don't like this level, but I think it's pretty cool, even if it does feel a little long and sluggish at some points. Another level I really like in this game, and I know I'm sorry I'm being annoying by just going through this game level by level, but the levels are so good in this game I can't help myself from not talking about them. But I really like the level Lava Reef Zone because it does my favorite thing and builds upon the world of this game, as in the second act boss, you can see the bottom of the Death Egg. And as we know, at the end of base Sonic 3, the Death Egg crashes into Angel Island Zone, meaning that Lava Reef Zone takes place in the depths of Angel Island Zone. That's such an awesome form of storytelling by connecting the levels. Tell me it's not. Where the game switches up the story is in Hidden Palace Zone, which is a short level based off of the cut level from Sonic 2. Knuckles challenges Sonic to yet another fight and promptly gets his ass kicked again, but as Sonic is leaving, we can see the Master Emerald. Knuckles comes to protect it, because that's his job. A damn Echidna has a better work ethic than me. That's very sad. Knuckles finds Dr. Robotnik, who steals the Master Emerald, showing that Dr. Robotnik tricked Knuckles into letting him steal the Master Emerald, so now he can defeat Sonic. I like how they were able to show how much distress Knuckles was in. It's so cool that they were able to show this with how little they had to work with hardware-wise. And as you progress into Sky Sanctuary Zone, we see that using the power of the Master Emerald, Dr. Robotnik was able to relaunch the Death Egg yet again. I've been talking about this a little bit as I've been talking about this game, but I really love the storytelling and world building they do with this game. Believe it or not, it took a very long time for video games to be able to tell full stories with full motion cutscenes and whatnot, so for a very long time they had to rely on what they could, and this game, for being released in the early 90s, does a great job at doing so. The other Sonic games are able to tell small stories, but this game perfected the storytelling potential of these games, and I love that. But anyway, now with the plot, Knuckles is in complete distress over the whole thing he swore to protect with his life being stolen from him, and the threat of the Death Egg, presumably being the most powerful it's ever been, is back again. I get that they couldn't have done this, but I think that this would have been a much cooler cliffhanger to leave the game on when they split it in half, but whatever. The level Sky Sanctuary has a lot of bosses to go through that call back to previous games, like this one, which is a remake of the very first boss fight in the series. I can't believe they're pandering us with nostalgia yet again in the Sonic series. In the next level, you enter the Death Egg one last time to take it down once and for all, so you do that. Okay, so I know that I've talked about Sonic 3 for way longer than I have any other classic Sonic game here, but there's a reason for that. Sonic 3 is a very important game to me. I'm gonna leave my version persona here for just a minute because I really want to talk about this. Sonic 3 is a game that means a lot to me for reasons I don't feel comfortable going too far into, but the first time I ever played this game I was dealing with a lot of bad stuff, and this is a very nice game to distract myself with. And now if I'm ever feeling down, I like to play this game because of how much it means to me. Is that sad? I think it's sweet. Okay, back to my other persona. Look at the funky early 3D title screen. It's kind of weird looking is what I'm trying to say. The special stages in this game don't make me sick like they do in other games. What an achievement. The special stages to get the Chaos Emeralds here are the Blue Spheres levels, and I really like these. They have you navigate through this maze to go over the Blue Spheres, and once you go over enough of them, you're rewarded with a Chaos Emerald. And you won't believe it, if you collect all 7 of them, you can turn into Super Sonic. But since this game was split into 2 different parts, they included a little extra reward if you collect the Chaos Emeralds in each half of the game. So if you do that, you're rewarded with a different version of Super Sonic where he's more shiny now. How fun. And then as Super Sonic, you can get the canon ending where guess what? Sonic defeats Robotnik. Wow, who could have guessed? This game is also a technological achievement for the Sega Genesis as it uses 3D graphics using the technique they used in games like Donkey Kong Country by tracing over 3D renders with pixels so it can run on a console. So while the 3D title screens do look a little goofy, it's still pretty cool. I've been talking about Sonic 3 for way too long, but that just goes to show how good and how important this game is to me. After Sonic 3 and Knuckles came out, the Sega Genesis was coming to an end, which meant the Sonic series was evolving. And since the Sonic fanbase is needlessly complicated, this signified the end of an era. This era being dubbed the Classic Sonic era, the games Sonic 1, 2, CD, 3, and also Knuckles. The next era of Sonic, which I hate splitting these games into eras, but it's been done for so long that this is the easiest way to do it. The next era of Sonic was dubbed the Modern Era, which started with a shift in art style and the split in the fanbase with the adventure games. There was a 3D Sonic game that was supposed to come out for the Sega Saturn that may have not caused a split in the Sonic fanbase over the change in Sonic's eye color. I sometimes wonder how an outsider views this series. We sound insane. This game would have been called Sonic Extreme, and guess what? I think it looked like shit and it would have sucked, so I'm glad it got cancelled. The classic designs of the Sonic characters would be replaced with a more modern take of the characters started in the Sonic Adventure games and used from then on. I want to talk about how much I dislike the split in the fanbase. This should not have caused a split like it did and started the classic and modern iterations of these characters. These are the same f***ing characters, bro. But anyway, the Sonic fanbase was split into people who like the more cutesy classic designs for the characters, people who like the more edgy modern designs for the characters. So that's why these games are classified as the classic Sonic games and the rest are considered the modern Sonic games. It's stupid. For years, people had clamored for a new classic Sonic game, especially with the bad taste in everyone's mouth when games like Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06 all decided to collectively piss in Sonic fans' mouths. I've always liked to think the split in Sonic designs as just being as simple as an art style change, and I like it a lot more that way. But guess what? Sonic fans, including myself, are f***ing insane, so wanted this dude to come back so bad. Well, in 2011, the 20th anniversary of Sonic was coming up, and for that, Sega decided to release Sonic Generations to celebrate his birthday. Basically, in this game, a time wormhole thing opens up and it sends a past version of Sonic into the current version of Sonic, and they're in the same time-like area. It's time travel. That's the most simple way of explaining it. I think that this is a cool concept to bring the classic iteration of Sonic back and having it make sense. Like, the reasons why the changes happened in his design was because of age, only if that made any damn sense. Like, of course, as Sonic aged, he would have became more lanky and skinnier, and maybe his fur would have changed shades of blue. But his eyes changed color? I don't know, man. If my eyes changed color overnight, I would be pretty freaked out, but maybe that's just how it works in the Sonic world. I'm not going to cover Sonic Generations here as I don't feel like it fits with the rest of the classic Sonic games, but this game does have classic Sonic as a playable character. While he doesn't play one-to-one as he did in the Genesis games, it's still a faithful recreation of the gameplay and level design of those games. And it's super nice to see some of the levels in the classic Sonic games reimagined with the stunning backgrounds in these levels. Just look at how Green Hill Zone looks in this game. After this game, thankfully in my opinion, years had progressed until we saw classic Sonic again. Because I really like the idea of the classic Sonic games taking place when Sonic was younger, and it's nice to see they brought back this iteration of his character for a little bit with Sonic Generations, but I never want them to pander again. But avast, in 2017, Sonic Mania was released. Sonic Mania was developed by Christian Whitehead and a few other studios. The reason why Christian Whitehead was given the go to develop this game was because of his works on the remakes of Sonic 1, 2, and CD, which are the best ways to play these games, and how I personally did for all this. These remakes included widescreen, which for a fast-paced game like Sonic, this helps so much, and the general quality of life improvements he made to these games were also very good. And he had expressed interest in creating a brand new Sonic game using the engine for the remakes of the other Sonic games, and with that, Sega heard money, so then came Sonic Mania. The second this game came out, it received some of the greatest critical reception a Sonic game has ever gotten, and well, was it deserved? I love Sonic Mania, it's a great game, but I have a lot of problems with this game that I will get into. But first, let's just talk about the plot of this game. This game takes place soon after the events of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sonic and Tails return to Angel Island due to reports of Dr. Robotnik being up to no good there.
That son of a bitch.
But this time Dr. Robotnik has access to a brand new magical rock after the failure of him trying to get the Chaos Emerald and the Master Emerald in Sonic 3. This magic space rock is able to control the environment around you and trick you into thinking you're somewhere else. So with this, Dr. Robotnik sends Sonic to places from his past. Okay, so that brings me to my main problem in this game. Sonic Mania does not stand out from any of the other classic Sonic games since so many of the levels are reused from other games. I mean, the opening is just a direct remake of the opening from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It just feels a little, I don't know, lazy to me. Although the detail of Sonic coming to a stop the second he gets on the island is a cute callback to Knuckles kicking Super Sonic's ass at the start of Sonic 3. Maybe it's more fair to say that this game isn't lazy, rather just more of a cash grab for those who remember old Sonic being better.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald? You've got to be kidding me, guys. This is like taking candy from a baby, which is fine by me.
Okay, maybe they actually had a point there. This game opens up with Green Hill Zone. I get that this game is supposed to be a nostalgia trip for kids who grew up in the 90s, but I feel like the 16-bit graphics and the fact that classic Sonic is back should have been able to sell these people on this game. They did not need to bring back all these old levels, including Green Hill Zone. I understand there's a whole plot reason for this with the whole Phantom Ruby Magic Stone Rock Space thing, but come on. And I also get that every other classic Sonic game starts with a bright green grass level, but at least they stood out from each other somewhat. One problem I and many others have with the older Sonic games is that sometimes a level will place an enemy right in front of you, right when you're going fast, meaning you'd have no reaction time, but this game has pretty much gotten rid of that issue completely. This game also follows a tradition of each new classic Sonic game introducing a new ability for Sonic, this one being the drop dash. If you hold the jump button at the peak of your jump, you'll do a smaller spin dash once you finish your jump, and this thing is actually very useful. It helps you maintain your speed and keep your momentum if you don't land a jump properly, and this move is so great they even kept it for future re-releases of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, as well as adding it to Sonic Frontiers. The fully realized pixel art of this level is also really great, which makes me wish that they were able to have an original take on a starting level than just reusing Green Hill Zone. What this game does to help old levels stand out from their original versions is they make Act 1 very similar to how it was in the original game, but once you reach Act 2 it does a complete 180. I like this concept a lot, but again, imagine a whole game with original level concepts. This game also likes to challenge your expectations, as in Green Hill Zone the Act 2 boss is a Death Egg robot, and as the first Eggman boss in the game, that's a sick idea. It's like showing that this time Eggman is an even bigger threat and he's using his most powerful creations from the previous games on you for his first option, or it's the Phantom Ruby, I can't tell. Right after Green Hill Zone, you're sent to Chemical Plant Zone, again using the Phantom Ruby's illusion thing. I also really like how Chemical Plant Zone is done here. While Act 1 just feels like how it did in Sonic 2, just a little bit of cleaning up to better fit with Modern Warfare level design, Act 2 switches everything up. In Act 2, they include one of my favorite level gimmicks where basically there's these harmful chemicals in these vats, but if you step on this syringe, you can make them bouncy. There's 3 levels to this, first being the poison, step on this and you'll get hurt. But if you hit it with the syringe or the blue liquid, it'll become kinda bouncy, and then if you hit it with the green liquid, it'll become extra bouncy. Don't try this in real life, by the way. And it would feel disingenuous to not mention the Act 2 boss for this level. I remember I had never played Puyo Puyo before this, and I thought it was super fun, and it convinced me to buy Puyo Puyo Tetris on the Switch. I am not immune to propaganda. Once Chemical Plant Zone ends, this game gives us its first brand new, completely original level. Why couldn't we have gotten a full game with levels like these? Like, sure, I was praising Green Hill and Chemical Plant, but imagine if they used the new gimmicks in those levels for a brand new, completely original level. Imagine how much more fresh this game would have felt. And it sucks that this didn't happen because Studiopolis Zone is so damn good it makes me want more. Just look at this level, the aesthetics are so great and it's entirely based off of a Hollywood movie set. That's so cool! Look at these microphone enemies, or look at how you can go behind these windows and Sonic Sprite will turn all black. That's sick as hell. And Act 2 of this level is even better, like you can be put in this bingo ball type machine, I don't know what you call it, but it's gambling, but bingo. They brought gambling back into Sonic! Yes! And the boss for this level is super creative too. It's a weather station, and the way you attack Robotnik has to do with what the weather conditions reported are. But once this level ends, it goes back to Reuse Central, which again is so annoying because of how great the original levels are. This level being Flying Battery Zone from Sonic 3. I'm not going to go over each reused level here because they're not super interesting to me, but I do like the transition between Studiopolis Act 2 and Flying Battery Act 1. The next original level in this game is Press Garden Zone, and I know I sound like a broken record here, but this level is so good and I want to see an original game made just like this. This level is like a newspaper press but in a Tokyo-inspired greenhouse, and it has these nice pink flowers and I quite like the snow. And the detail of seeing the newspapers being printed in the background is super cute. Like, I would pay for the newspaper if I knew it came from this level. But to all the newspaper companies going out of business, take notes from Sonic Mania. This level also brings back the cut rabbit enemy from the first build of Sonic 1, like how cute of a callback is that? The next level in this game is a remake of Stardust Speedway from Sonic CD, and I know I wouldn't talk about the remade levels, but I really like the boss fight for Act 2 of this level, so I just want to talk about it, please. It's of course a race against Metal Sonic because that's what this level is most iconic for, but once you obviously kick his ass because look at Metal Sonic, using the power of the Phantom Rock Ruby Purple MacGuffin, he turns into this monster of a Metal Sonic where you need to outrun him, and this is such a cool evolution of this boss fight. And after this you get remakes of Hydro City, Oil Ocean, Lava Reef, Metallic Madness, which I don't really find much interesting to talk about with them, so I'll just talk about the 2 remaining original zones. Mirage Saloon Zone is based off of a cut level from Sonic 2, and I really like this one. This level shoots you out of a pistol sometimes, which is damn cool because I love guns in Sonic games, but just running around a wild western desert as Sonic is sick. I'm normally not a huge fan of desert levels in video games because they always feel a little bit barren, even though that may be the point, but whatever. But this level is such a set style of the theme, it's great. And that's something Sonic Mania does great, having style. This game has an entire level based off of a Hollywood set with a ton of TV themes, a desert level that has pistols shoot you around the level. Tell me any other game that would do anything like that. Mirage Saloon Zone also brings back characters Bark, Bean, and Fang. I had no idea who Bark nor Bean were before this game came out, but Fang, he's chill. Technically they're not actually back because they're illusions made by the Phantom Ruby, but just let us have this one please. The last original level in this game is Titanic Monarch, which is such a fun level even if it drags on a little bit, but the colors are nice. To get the canon ending of this game, you must collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds to become Super Sonic, who would have seen that one coming. You reach the bonus stage in a similar way you get to them in Sonic 3, where you just have these big portal rings that are hidden around the stage, and once you enter one, you gotta do the bonus stage. The bonus stages in this game are based off of the ones from Sonic CD, but this time they didn't make my eyes feel like they got burnt with a branding iron. You gotta collect these blue dots to become faster to catch up with the UFO while also managing your time, but they're actually really fun. The canon ending of this game gives you an extra boss fight to fight a Super Sonic, which then leads you to the final ending of this game. Okay, so basically after kicking Robotnik's ass once again, I gotta stop saying that. Okay, so after defeating Dr. Robotnik once again, that's boring, a portal opens up taking Sonic and the Phantom Ruby, and do you know what this leads to? Sonic fucking Forces. I'm gonna save my sanity here, not talk much about Sonic Forces, I despise that game, but this game just had to tie in with Sonic Forces. It just had to. Well, just to get it out of the way, Sonic Forces, like Sonic Generations, includes classic Sonic as a playable character along with modern Sonic and whatever you made your DeviantArt tie-in character. While the classic Sonic levels in this game are some of the most dead-feeling lame levels of all time, also they had to include Green Hill Zone. Again. God damn it. Going back to Sonic Mania, for as much bitching as I did about this game not feeling original enough, Sonic Mania is a great game. I think from a level design and gameplay perspective, this is probably the best classic Sonic game, and I think it easily could have been storytelling-wise if it wasn't so derivative of previous games. To put it into perspective for you, Sonic Mania has 12 full-length zones in the game and only 4 of them are brand new levels. The remaining 8 are all from previous games. What? So again, while Sonic Mania is an amazing game, it just can't reach the top for me because of how much this game does that it doesn't own. And that sucks because stylistically this game is amazing, like the level backgrounds, the animations, and the colors. So you know, I want more of this. And that seemed to be the sentiment from many other people, which led to a sequel with all original levels to begin development. However, due to Sega wanting to get rid of the pixel art style that Sonic Mania used to a 2.5D style, the Sonic Mania devs argued against this until they eventually left the project because they didn't want to do that. So that made Sega take this project into their own hands, and with that came the release of Sonic Superstars developed by Sonic Team and Arzest. Yes, the Arzest that made Balan f***ing Wonderworld. Okay, so right from the get-go, Sonic Superstars is a huge switch up from all the other classic Sonic games. Now, it may not have been obvious at first sight. What the hell am I saying? It's not pixel art anymore, it's blatantly obvious. I've never been huge on the 2.5D style of games. Of course there are some that are stunning, like Little Big Planet or the modern Donkey Kong games, but without a very stylized art style, they tend to look cheap and bland to me. For example, the new Super Mario Bros. Series. They all have an incredibly basic art style, which causes them all to kind of blend together. For example, look at this footage of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Looks pretty basic, right? Well, that's actually footage of New Super Mario Bros. U. This is New Super Mario Bros. Wii. And when Sonic Superstars was first revealed, I felt kind of the same way. The game just looked basic. I don't think that it looks lifeless, not at all actually, but come on. Just look at the bouncy animations from Sonic Mania compared to the pretty stale look of Sonic Superstars. If Sega really wanted to ditch the pixel art style, I would have loved them to use the hand-drawn style similar to a game like Cuphead, not the 2.5D style they used here. But you know, that would cost money, so of course they can't do that. As much as I want to say that this doesn't matter and the game itself is what matters, for me and many others, the style of Sonic is a huge part of why we're so attached to the series. And again, using Sonic Mania as a comparison here, one of the reasons why Sonic Mania was praised so much was because of the art style it used, also the nostalgia, but that's besides the point. And then next to it, you have a game that looks like this. Like, where's the edge here? Why should I play this compared to all the other 2D platformers that came out in 2023? But again, while the art style is what matters here, the gameplay is truly what matters the most, so let's talk about that. But first, I should probably talk about the story here. The story here is nowhere as deep as games like Sonic 3 or even Sonic Mania, which is a nice breath of fresh air. Basically here, Dr. Robotnik, although he's more commonly called Eggman in this game, so I should probably start using his modern name, Eggman. Eggman finds this uncharted territory called the North Star Islands and does his Eggman thing where he turns all natural wildlife into his trademark badniks. What's special about the North Star Islands is that some of the critters here made an AO3 account and got into inflation. Sorry, that was really out of pocket. I'm actually sorry. Some animals here are really big. There, are you happy? So Eggman uses these big guys to his advantage to help him steal the Chaos Emeralds and take over the world, because he's never done that before. But also to do this, he enlists the help of Fang the Hunter, like the dude that returned in Sonic Mania, to help him take down Sonic and his friends. You see, Fang isn't like other Jerboas. He actually holds no resemblance to one. He's a hunter. He has a gun. So with that, Sonic and his friends must take down Eggman and Fang and rescue the animals of North Star Island. Now, I already said this, but I enjoy the more relaxed take on the story, because quite frankly, it's nice to have a story of just Sonic and his friends against Eggman against the world, and not have to worry about a giant death egg in the sky and Sonic forces existing. So I enjoyed the story. They didn't go over the top, they just did a story that allowed a new classic Sonic-style game to exist, and they also brought back Fang. I commend them for that, especially Fang. Starting the game, the first level you play is Bridge Island Zone, which actually has a fresh take on the common trope of every Sonic game having to start with a bright green grass level. But this one also has a lot of bridges, hence the name Bridge Island Zone. They made a whole island based off of bridges, that's crazy. I also really like the rock formations and stuff you can see here. I would have loved to see something like this done in Sonic Mania instead of damn Green Hill Zone again. I also feel like the Sonic Mania devs could have done so much more with the concept here, but I don't want to spend all my time whining about what we could have gotten. That means nothing for me, I'm the b***ing master, but still. This game introduces an optional third act for each level, which I think is a great way to pad out game time. You see, before they would pad out game time by making the special stages really annoying, which I'll get to the special stages from this game in a few moments, but this game is able to pad out game time by giving you a bonus optional act for each level in the game. Exceptions apply though, it's weird. Most often, the extra act is based around the abilities of a character, but they also have acts based around navigating a fruit to the end of the stage as Amy. It's kind of fun. And it's a cheap and fun way of doing this, because not to be a hater or anything, but clearly this game was made on the cheap, so it's cool that they're able to reuse assets without being annoying about it. Although one weird thing about this game is how inconsistent the levels can be. While the majority of levels follow the structure of 2 normal acts and an optional third act, a few levels have only 1 act, like, why did they do this? Again, clearly this game was made on a budget, so why would they pass on the opportunity to not make the game longer and reuse some assets? Like, I am perfectly content living without a second act for Sand Sanctuary Zone, but I don't know, it's kind of confusing why they didn't make a second act. You could have just reused every single asset. A change made to this game that I really enjoy, however, is them deciding to ramp up the difficulty a little bit. A little bit, but, you know, an effort counts. My problem with modern platformers is that a game is usually the easiest game of all time with hardly any challenge or way too hard, and while Sonic Superstars isn't particularly hard, it does ramp up as the game continues. I think the majority of the bosses, especially in the late game, are very challenging, which I enjoy, but the last level is also pretty hard. Speaking of the last level, I really like this level and it has a very creative idea. Where the first act is a pretty long level where you have to go through this mechanical place to reach the boss, but once you reach the second act, you must play the entire level in reverse to reach the final boss. You may think that essentially playing the exact same level twice could feel a little repetitive, however surprisingly it doesn't in my opinion, which I think is really cool. I think that as much as I like many of the ideas this game has, I still think this is one of the weakest classic Sonic games and maybe even Sonic games in general. And I have my reasons. For one, again, I'm the b***ing master. This game just doesn't have the heart of a game like Sonic 3 or even Sonic Mania, and as stupid as it feels to say this, I think a lot of that has to do with the art style this game uses. I'm not going to go on a whole rant about the art style again, but I want you to look at a level like Speed Jungle, a great level in its own right, but imagine if it had the style the Mania devs have. While I do think that this game has some of the best designed levels and most fun gameplay gimmicks introduced in the series, I just feel like this game again feels a little lifeless. There are some levels that I enjoy a lot though, like again, Speed Jungle. I don't think that there's ever been a proper jungle level in a Sonic game. The Game Gear one doesn't count, so it's pretty cool to see that they did one for this game. I also really like Cyber Station Zone a lot, however sadly this is one of those levels that only has 1 act for some reason. Like, I wonder what a movie with only 1 act would feel like. This level also has some pretty creative ideas, like it turns you into a squid and you have to go through a portion of the level as a squid, or it'll turn you into a rat and you have to do a short maze as a rat. There's also this one part where it turns you into a pixelated version of the character you're playing as. I think this is cute, but I want to know why they didn't just use the sprites from the old games. Like, we all know Sega isn't above doing this. They made Sonic Mania after all. To make it clear that wasn't a jab towards that game, I'm just referencing that so much of that game uses nostalgia bait rather than original ideas. One of my favorite ways the game switches up the gameplay is how they change the use of the Chaos Emeralds. In pretty much every other game, all the Chaos Emeralds do is turn you into your super form once you've collected them all, which for me personally makes me feel not inclined to collect them all, as Super Sonic just feels like an easy mode to me. But what this game does is have a power connected to each Chaos Emerald, giving you more of a reason to collect them all, as they're actually useful for something if you don't have all 7. However, some of the powers feel a little situational, like all the Purple Emerald does is give you the power of Vision, which allows you to see hidden objects around the stage, but it's only useful on occasion, as well as a Yellow Emerald and its Slow Motion ability. But there are others that actually feel useful, like the Blue Emerald, which gives you the Avatar ability, making a billion versions of your character and taking out most enemies on the screen. You thought one Sonic was bad, now there's this many. We're never getting a quality game again. There's my personal favorite power, which is connected to the Red Emerald, which gives you the bullet ability, which sadly does not give Sonic a gun a la Shadow of the Hedgehog 2005, but instead you can shoot in any direction you want to go. This is very useful if you miss a platform or something, and it's something I actually found myself using consistently, which I would say that this means that this ability is doing its job correctly. You get the Chaos Emeralds just like how you do in Sonic 3 and Sonic Mania by finding a big portal ring hidden around the stage and entering it and playing the special stage. And the special stage in this game is like kinda wacky, but in a cool way. You gotta follow these balls in the sky, no, not in the fun way, and lead yourself to the Chaos Emerald while also dodging spikes and whatnot that's in the sky. When I first saw these, I thought they looked way too easy, but they actually do get pretty hard, but they never feel unfair like the half pipes in Sonic 2, which is very nice, I'll give them that. Sonic Superstars handles the Chaos Emeralds in probably the best way any Sonic game has had ever, and I think that's a really refreshing way of handling them. I think that if they use the next power gimmick in the next 3D Sonic game, it could make the Chaos Emeralds feel a lot more rewarding to collect and not just feel like you're collecting them to get to the next boss fight. I'm talking about the way the Chaos Emeralds work in Sonic Frontiers, and since Sega wants to have the open world gameplay of Sonic Frontiers be the next gameplay format for 3D Sonic, I think that this new Emerald gimmick could make it feel a lot more rewarding. Sonic Superstars also introduces a new character into the Sonic franchise, this character being Trip. Throughout the game, you see Trip being an anti-social ass and wearing this helmet. However, once you finish the game, you unlock her as a playable character. My main problem with Trip in this game is that I feel like if she wasn't in the game, it would make next to no difference. She doesn't really play a role in the main story, unlike the other characters introduced in the other Sonic games. Like, the entire plot of Sonic 3 revolved around the new character Knuckles, or even Sonic 2 with Tails, to be fucking annoying and get lost every 3 seconds, but still. Trip is just kinda here, and while I like the design of Trip, she just feels a little useless to be here. I do like her super form though, the dragon is sick. Lastly, I want to talk about the multiplayer in this game. It exists. One of the main selling points for this game is that it's a multiplayer Sonic game, which should sell like a god church, whatever that means. However, a Sonic game isn't designed like a Mario game. Sonic levels aren't linear, they have multiple paths to go through, so multiplayer would have to be completely different in a game like this. And while the gameplay itself isn't too affected by the addition of multiplayer, I'll actually commend them for not drastically altering the level layouts to better fit up to 4 players. They do have a standalone multiplayer mode. So I played a little bit of it, and what did I think of it? The multiplayer mode sucks, don't play it. So in the end, I really do like Sonic Superstars, but I feel like this game doesn't stand out whatsoever while looking at it with the other classic Sonic games. As well as this game not selling super well because it was released only days before the first 2D Mario game in 11 years, and this game not even being in the same league of quality as that game. So it's not hard to see why this game isn't looked at super favorably, because it's really nothing special and it's mostly just okay. But with this game comes the end of the classic Sonic series of games, until Sega wants to make a new one, like 2 years. But I want to say something about the whole distinction between classic Sonic and modern Sonic. F the distinction between classic Sonic and modern Sonic. Is there a reason why this version of Sonic, the older version of Sonic, can only be played in 3D games, and while this version of Sonic, the younger version of Sonic, can only be played in 2D games? F no. I would even say that in terms of gameplay, modern Sonic is much more refreshing in 2D than classic Sonic. Like, look at the Sonic Advance or Sonic Rush games. So why is it that the only time Sega will ever make a 2D platformer is with this version of Sonic? I'll answer that question: pandering, and you are the reason. With the release of Sonic Mania, everyone made that game out to be the future of Sonic, even though in reality that game was the exact same as all the other classic Sonic games, as well as this game being the most favorably reviewed Sonic game in nearly 20 years at that point. So Sega got this idea that the only way for Sonic to be successful is for them to use classic Sonic, which is like, no. Imagine if they made another game like Sonic Rush. I'm sure people would like that more than them just pumping out a new classic Sonic game every few years. We don't need to endlessly go back to the past to be happy with Sonic. And let me just say that I think the difference between classic Sonic and modern Sonic is stupid, and I think that it should just be as simple as an art style change. Not that these games take place in the past and these games take place in the present. That's way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, does the first Mario game take place when Mario is a kid because his overalls were a different color in the game? No, it's a simple design change and should just be looked at as nothing more. So I don't want to see classic Sonic again. Please, Sega, these games are amazing, but you don't need to keep pandering to people that only like classic Sonic, because in all honesty, fuck them, they can keep their old games. I want nothing more than the Sonic franchise to succeed, don't take that literally, and I think the stupid distinction between these two versions of Sonic is holding the series back, and quite frankly, I'm tired of it. Sega, if you're gonna make a new 2D Sonic game, which I encourage you to do, use modern Sonic, in fact. Get rid of the stupid modern and classic Sonic labels. Sonic is Sonic. Use Sonic, and make a game in the style of, say, Sonic Rush, Sonic Advance, and you can do so much more with that. Just because these games are looked at so favorably, that doesn't mean that that's all you can do to be successful.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. You guys are the problem, not me.
Well, that was me looking back at all the old classic Sonic games, and I want to make it clear, I love each and every one of these games. I may endlessly bitch about these games, but it comes out of a place of love. I also might be bipolar. Each of these games holds up in their own right, whether it be the world building, the stories they tell in each game, or the fun and endlessly replayable levels in each of these games. These games mean a lot to me and countless others, which is why I'm happy to say that some of these games are the most widely accessible games on the market. For as much hate as the Sonic Origins collection is given, I can't recommend it enough for anyone wanting to re-experience these games or experience them for the first time. For being 30-plus-year-old games, they still all, most of them, hold up excellently in the modern age, which is why they all feel so natural with all the improvements they were given like widescreen and whatnot. Imagine a game like Mario 3 with widescreen, that would just feel off, but Sonic? No, this just feels natural. That's how I replay these games, so really, please, these games are so good and so accessible, please play them. Except Sonic 1, you can skip out on that one if you want.
Well, thanks for listening to me bitch and moan about Sonic for this long, but also me appreciating him. Well, tune in next time where I'll be doing that some more. This hedgehog has me in an endless loop of hell, doesn't he?